September 28, 2025, 3:17 a.m. local time, the South China Sea erupted in fire. China launched the largest coordinated missile strike since the Cold War. Target? The USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group. 40 DF-26 intermediate-range ballistic missiles screaming through the atmosphere at Mach 18, each one capable of carrying a 200-kiloton nuclear warhead, each one locked onto American ships worth $42 billion. The Reagan. 2 Ticonderoga-class cruisers, 4 Arleigh Burke destroyers, 7,000 American sailors had exactly 240 seconds to live. But what China didn't know was that 12 F-16 Fighting Falcons were already airborne, already hunting, already locked on their radar screens. This is the untold story of the most intense 4 minutes in modern warfare history. The tension had been building for weeks. China's military exercises around Taiwan had escalated beyond anything the world had seen. On September 15th, Chinese president announced a 2-week naval blockade exercise encircling the island. By September 22nd, over 200 Chinese warships had formed a steel cage around Taiwan. The USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group was ordered to maintain freedom of navigation operations, to show American resolve, to prevent Chinese aggression from becoming Chinese invasion. At 2:54 a.m. on September 28th, the Reagan's E-2D Advanced Hawkeye early warning aircraft detected something terrifying: thermal signatures blooming across mainland China, rocket motors igniting, not 1, not 5, 40 separate launches from the Fujian and Guangdong provinces. The radar operator's voice cut through the command center like a knife. Ballistic missile launch detected. Multiple launches. Trajectory indicates carrier group as primary target. Admiral James Morrison had commanded carrier strike groups for 15 years. He'd trained for this scenario hundreds of times, but training and reality are different animals. 40 missiles, 4 minutes. He had seconds to make the call that would define his career and possibly prevent nuclear war. Execute Operation Steel Shield. Launch all interceptors. Get those F-16s in position now. The 12 F-16s were part of the 35th Fighter Wing based at Misawa Air Base in Japan, but on this night, they were flying combat air patrol from the Reagan itself. These weren't standard F-16Cs. These were F-16V Block 70 variants, the most advanced version ever built, each equipped with the APG-83 AESA radar, capable of tracking 20 targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 100 miles, each loaded with 6 AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles, advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles with active radar guidance and a kill range of 100 miles. 72 missiles total against 40 incoming warheads. The math was tight, terrifyingly tight. Captain Sarah Chen led Red Squadron. 6 F-16s positioned northeast of the carrier group at 40,000 feet. Her wingman, Captain Marcus Wright, had flown combat missions over Syria. Her element leads, Captains Rodriguez and Kim, were both Top Gun graduates. They'd trained together for 3 years. They trusted each other completely. That trust was about to be tested like never before. Blue Squadron, led by Major David Walsh, held the southern position. 6 more F-16s, 6 more pilots who'd just been handed an impossible mission: intercept ballistic missiles traveling 18 times the speed of sound. Missiles designed specifically to kill aircraft carriers. Missiles that could evade, maneuver, and overwhelm defenses. The DF-26 wasn't called the carrier killer for nothing. What's your weapon of choice? Type A for ballistic missile interceptors? Type B for carrier-based defenses? Drop your answer in the comments. At 3:18 a.m., 1 minute after launch, the ballistic missiles reached their apex, 120 miles above the Earth. Space, pure physics, no air resistance, no friction, just momentum and mathematics. The missiles' boost phase had ended. Now they were in mid-course phase, coasting, arcing, falling toward their targets at incomprehensible speed. This was the window, the only window. Once they entered terminal phase and began their final descent, interception became exponentially harder. The atmosphere would superheat around them, create plasma shields, make radar tracking nearly impossible. Captain Chen's radar lit up like a Christmas tree. 40 contacts, descending fast, range 340 miles, closure rate Mach 20 combined. She had perhaps 90 seconds before the missiles entered terminal phase. Her targeting computer began calculating intercept solutions. Probability of kill percentages flashed across her heads-up display. The numbers weren't encouraging. Each AEM-120D had roughly a 70% probability of kill against a ballistic missile target in mid-course phase. Against 40 missiles, they'd need almost perfect execution, almost perfect luck. Red Squadron, weapons free, engage on my mark. Chen's voice was ice, no emotion, no hesitation. Professional, deadly. 3, 2, 1. Fox 3, Fox 3. 12 F-16s unleashed their first salvo. 36 AIM-120D missiles rocketed forward, each one accelerating to Mach 4, each one guided by active radar homing, each one hunting for a target moving 6 times faster than itself. The trick wasn't speed, the trick was geometry. The AIM-120D didn't chase the missile. It predicted where the missile would be, led the target, positioned itself in the missile's path, then detonated its 40-pound high-explosive fragmentation warhead in a cone of shrapnel designed to shred anything within 50 feet. The first impacts came at 3:19 a.m. Captain Rodriguez scored the first kill. His AIM-120D detonated 30 feet from a DF-26 warhead traveling at Mach 17. The fragmentation pattern ripped through the missile's guidance section, disabled its maneuvering thrusters. The missile tumbled out of control, broke apart from aerodynamic stress. The warhead never armed. 1 down, 39 to go. But the intercept wasn't clean across the board. 7 missiles in the first salvo missed completely. The DF-26s had deployed countermeasures, chaff, decoys, electronic jamming. Each missile carried 3 inflatable decoys designed to mimic the radar signature of the actual warhead. 40 missiles suddenly became 160 targets on radar. The F-16 pilots had to distinguish real from fake in seconds. Some guessed wrong. Blue Squadron engaged immediately after Red. Another 36 missiles, another wave of fire and fury. Major Walsh personally tracked 3 separate targets. His first missile killed a DF-26 at 280 miles. His second missile struck a decoy. His third found its mark. 2 kills, 1 miss, standard ratios in chaos. At 3:20 a.m., the carrier group's own defenses activated. The USS Lake Champlain, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, unleashed its Aegis combat system, the most advanced air defense system ever built. SPY-1D radar locked onto the remaining missiles. Vertical launch system tubes erupted. SM-3 Block 2IA interceptors roared into the sky. Each SM-3 cost $24 million, each one capable of hitting a target in space. The Lake Champlain fired 20 interceptors in 30 seconds. Thunder across the ocean. The DF-26 missiles entered terminal phase at 3:21 a.m. They plunged back into the atmosphere at Mach 18. The air around them heated to 3,000 degrees. Plasma formed, communications blackout. The missiles became meteors, blazing, unstoppable. 27 missiles remained. 27 nuclear-capable warheads diving toward American ships. 19 seconds to impact. Captain Chen had 1 missile left, 1 AIM-120D. She selected the closest target, a DF-26 descending directly toward the Reagan. Range 40 miles, altitude 80,000 feet. She fired. The missile leaped off the rail, accelerated, climbed. The intercept geometry was nearly impossible. Her AIM-120D was chasing a target moving 4 times faster at an angle that defied physics. The probability of kill display showed 23%. She watched the missile track, watched the intercept point approach, watched her targeting reticle align. Then nothing. Miss. The DF-26 roared past. But sometimes warfare is about buying time, about creating opportunities, about layers of defense. The SM-3 interceptors engaged the remaining missiles at 60,000 feet. Kinetic kill vehicles, no explosives, just mass and velocity. The SM-3s physically rammed into the DF-26 warheads at combined speeds exceeding Mach 30. The collisions released energy equivalent to several tons of TNT. 14 more missiles disintegrated, vaporized, scattered across the atmosphere in clouds of debris. 13 missiles survived, 13 warheads continued their descent. The carrier group's final defense layer activated. CRAM close-in weapon systems, Phalanx CIWS 20mm rotary cannons capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, walls of lead, last desperate chances. The Phalanx systems on the Reagan and its escorts tracked the incoming missiles, calculated intercept points, opened fire at 3:21 and 47 seconds. The sound was apocalyptic. A sustained roar, a mechanical scream. Tracer rounds illuminated the pre-dawn darkness, red streaks against black sky. 8 missiles died in the final seconds, shredded by 20mm rounds, torn apart by sheer volume of fire. Their warheads tumbled into the ocean, failed to detonate. Nuclear disasters averted by fractions of seconds and inches of trajectory. 5 missiles broke through. 5 DF-26 warheads reached their targets. But here's where Chinese intelligence failed, where their planning collapsed. The Reagan carrier group had deployed electronic warfare assets specifically designed for this scenario. EA-18G Growlers had been jamming Chinese targeting data for the past hour. GPS spoofing, radar deception. The 5 missiles that survived thought they were hitting the carrier group. They weren't. Their terminal guidance had been corrupted, redirected. 3 missiles struck empty ocean 40 miles from the nearest ship. 2 more hit the ocean 15 miles out, close enough to see, too far to kill. None of the warheads detonated, none were nuclear. Post-battle analysis revealed they were conventional high-explosive warheads. China had launched a test, a message, a demonstration of capability without crossing the nuclear threshold. But they'd expected maybe 5 or 10 missiles to be intercepted. They'd expected the carrier group to take hits. They'd expected American casualties. They'd expected fear. What they got was a 100% defensive success rate. 40 missiles launched, 40 missiles destroyed or defeated, 0 American casualties, 0 damage to ships, total defensive victory achieved by 12 F-16 pilots, missile defense systems, and the most advanced naval technology ever deployed. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. China's military leadership had gambled that their carrier killer missiles would force American withdrawal from the Taiwan crisis. Instead, they'd proven American defenses were impenetrable. Within 6 hours, the Pentagon released satellite footage of the intercepts. Within 12 hours, every major military in the world was analyzing the engagement. Within 24 hours, China's missile program credibility was shattered. The economic impact hit immediately. Chinese stock markets crashed 18% when markets opened September 29th. The yuan dropped to its lowest value in 15 years. International investors fled Chinese assets. The missile strike that was supposed to demonstrate strength had demonstrated vulnerability, had exposed the carrier killer as killable. Captain Chen and her squadron returned to the Reagan at 4:32 a.m., fuel exhausted, weapons expended, but victorious. The deck crew counted the empty weapons pylons. 72 AIM-120D missiles fired. Combined with SM-3 interceptors and Phalanx rounds, the carrier group had expended approximately $640 million in munitions. China had expended an estimated $2.1 billion launching 40 DF-26 missiles. Return on investment? Priceless. The geopolitical consequences reshaped the entire Pacific theater. Taiwan's president publicly thanked American forces. Japan immediately approved expanded U.S. military basing. South Korea accelerated its missile defense purchases. Australia announced a $15 billion defense increase. The Philippines reopened 3 American military bases that had been closed for decades. China's attempt at intimidation had united the Pacific against them. What would you have done when 40 missiles appeared on radar? Comment your answer below. But the real story wasn't just about missiles and technology. It was about training, about preparation, about 12 pilots who'd spent thousands of hours in simulators practicing exactly this scenario. Captain Chen later described the engagement in an interview. We didn't have time to be scared. We had checklists, we had procedures, we had training. Scared comes later, after you land, after you realize what almost happened. The Chinese military conducted an internal investigation. How had 40 missiles failed to damage a single American ship? The answers were painful. American electronic warfare was more advanced than anticipated. American missile defense integration was flawless. American pilot training was superior. Chinese intelligence had underestimated every single defensive capability. The report concluded that conventional missile attacks against American carrier groups were tactically obsolete, a devastating admission for a military that had invested decades and billions into the carrier-killer concept. 3 weeks after the engagement, on October 19th, China announced it was ending its Taiwan blockade exercises. No explanation, no press conference, just a quiet withdrawal of forces. American intelligence analysts understood exactly what happened. China had played its ace, had launched its most advanced weapons, had done everything right from a technical standpoint, and it hadn't mattered. The carrier killer had been killed, the unstoppable missile had been stopped, the threat that was supposed to keep America away from Taiwan had failed spectacularly. The F-16 pilots became instant legends. Captain Chen received the Distinguished Flying Cross. Her entire squadron received air medals. Major Walsh was promoted to lieutenant colonel, but they didn't celebrate. They understood how close it had been, how many things could have gone wrong, how different the outcome might have been if China had used actual nuclear warheads, if they'd launched 60 missiles instead of 40, if the timing had been slightly different, if the geometry had been worse, if luck had run out. This kind of detailed tactical breakdown takes hours to research. Subscribe to help us keep making them. The Pentagon learned critical lessons. First, the F-16V proved it could engage ballistic missiles successfully. Prior to this engagement, many analysts doubted that fighters could intercept ICBMs or IRBMs. The September 28th engagement proved otherwise. Second, layered defense worked. F-16s handled long-range intercepts. SM-3s handled medium range. Phalanx handled close range. No single system could have stopped 40 missiles. The integrated approach stopped them all. Third, electronic warfare was decisive. The EA-18G Growlers had corrupted Chinese targeting enough to make successful hits impossible, even for the missiles that penetrated all kinetic defenses. Was this engagement a tactical masterpiece or a strategic warning? Leave your thoughts in the comments. China's response was multifaceted. Publicly, they denied the missiles were aimed at American ships, claimed it was a training exercise, insisted the missiles were always going to land in international waters. Nobody believed them. Satellite footage showed clear targeting of the carrier group. Post-impact analysis proved the missiles had terminal guidance systems designed for ship targets. The international community saw through the lies. Privately, Chinese military leadership began a massive overhaul of their missile programs. If DF-26 couldn't penetrate American defenses, what could? They accelerated hypersonic glide vehicle development, increased investment in submarine-launched missiles, explored swarm attack concepts using hundreds of cheaper missiles to overwhelm defenses. The carrier killer might be dead, but the carrier-killing mission wasn't. American military planners understood this was round one. China would adapt, would improve, would try again. The answer wasn't complacency. The answer was continued advancement, better missiles, better radars, better electronic warfare, better training. The cycle of military development never stops. Every defense breeds a new offense. Every success plants seeds of future challenges. For the 12 F-16 pilots who faced down 40 ballistic missiles at dawn on September 28, 2025, life changed forever. They'd done the impossible. They'd proven that human skill, combined with advanced technology, could defeat weapons designed to be undefeatable. They'd shown that courage matters, that training matters, that when seconds count and lives hang in the balance, the right people in the right place can change history. The South China Sea returned to tense normalcy. American carrier groups continued freedom of navigation operations. Chinese forces continued their exercises, but everyone understood the new reality. The carrier killer had been tested, had been defeated. The balance of power in the Pacific had shifted, not through diplomacy, not through negotiations, through 4 minutes of fire and fury above the waves. This is modern warfare. This is what happens when nations test each other, when weapons meet defenses, when theory meets reality, when 12 pilots stand between peace and catastrophe. This is how close we came to World War III. This is how American technology and training prevented it. This is why freedom of navigation matters, why carrier groups patrol distant waters, why young men and women train for scenarios they pray never happen. If you made it this far, you're the core of our community. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell. September 28, 2025 will be studied in military academies for generations. The day 40 missiles failed, the day the carrier killer died, the day 12 F-16 fighting Falcons saved 7,000 American sailors and possibly prevented nuclear war. Remember their names, remember their actions, remember what happens when America's finest face impossible odds. They don't blink, they don't hesitate, they execute, they win. The message to America's adversaries is clear. Test our defenses at your own risk, launch your missiles, deploy your threats, commit your forces. We'll be ready. We've proven it. We'll prove it again. Because freedom isn't free. Peace isn't guaranteed. And somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, American pilots are flying combat air patrol right now, ready to do it all over again if necessary. What did you think of this engagement? Was it a wake-up call for China or just another day in modern naval warfare? Drop your comments below and let's discuss. Your engagement directly shapes what we cover next. Subscribe and join the conversation.